Hello again, everyone. This week, we are going to be moving into Chapter 6, where I'll say that of Chapters 5, 6, and 7, Chapter 6 is the one that I think is the least worthwhile. There's some nice stuff in here that bridges the gap between 5 and 7 and covers some important details for flavors of things we'll see in Chapter 7, but in particular, 6.1 makes some really silly assumptions and setup. Where for that, we're looking at making what's called a confidence interval estimate for mu, assuming we know sigma. And yes, there's some nice things there in terms of defining what a confidence interval is and what an interval estimate is generally as compared to a point estimate. And there's some useful things there for things called sample sizes, that is, sample sizes to get certain amounts of information that we'll spend a lot more time on, but in particular, the z-score approach to getting a confidence interval for mu, assuming you have sigma, it's just silly. I don't do that stuff very often because it feels a bit unnecessary to ever want mu if you have sigma, because you kind of need mu to get sigma. So that one's not our highest priority, but there is some basic conceptual stuff in there that is important, and the sample size things aren't so bad. What's more useful really is in 6.2, where we're talking about making those same kinds of confidence interval estimates, but instead using a new distribution called the t-distribution. The t-distribution is a closely related cousin of the normal distribution, specifically for cases where we don't know a lot of information about the population and we have small samples, but in particular, we use it when we don't know sigma, when all we have is s to work from. We need a little bit more variation. And the story behind the t-distribution, it's kind of an interesting one. So I'm going to leave it to you guys to dig that up for me, and maybe you'll get a little bit of extra credit for doing so. But the things in 6.2, very similar computations for very similar reasons to what we get in 6.1, except we have different amounts of information. And then finally in 6.3, we are looking at making the same sort of confidence interval estimate, but now in terms of population proportions. So something like the amount of people who say yes versus the amount of people who say no to certain ballot measures or whatever, in terms of percentage splits between people, where this uses some information that's hidden in the extra credit section on the binomial approximation with the normal distribution. That's in section 5.5. We'll get the most important stuff in there ourselves, where we're still looking at the same kinds of computations with intervals and sample sizes, but know that there are some pieces in there that we don't see technically in this class unless you choose to go out of your way to find them. And to be fair, there's a lot of stuff that we still have to talk around anyway. Regardless, those are our main topics we're going to be talking about here. So for this week, we're back to pretty much normal scheduling as far as getting work done. We have a worksheet for some practice with these things. We have MyLab deadlines. Oh, I don't know what that would look like. But we have MyLab deadlines for the assignments in here next week, and then a pre-assessment to set us up for what I think is really the crown jewel of this semester, Chapter 7. But that's a little ways away. Let's start in here with confidence intervals first.